And we're on. Hello, everyone. Welcome to RSP Podcast with me, Rajjan. Here with Ash Dykes, all round action man. How you doing, man?
Good, mate. How you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. Getting on with things.
Surviving the whole Corona
Just got
pandemic, hey?
Mission Possible. You've done what is it? You've walked solo across the Mongolian desert. Been on the Joe Rogan Experience, which is actually you're the first one I watched on Joe Rogan Experience. Actually, my
Oh,
friends
yeah,
just
really?
yours. You say, I reckon you really like this guy. I was like, all right, I'll check him out. I was like, oh, he's a madman.
Oh,
So,
that's quality.
so
Quality.
tell me about
Appreciate
yourself,
that.
where you come from.
It's a long one as well, isn't it? 2.5 hours long. So fair dues, respect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like though? Is he like? Did you jam with him before and after? What's he like?
Oh, he was ace. Yeah, we were talking for I don't know how long once the podcast ended, maybe another 30, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
We went down different lanes, different topics like
Yeah.
diet, nutrition, fitness, all of that. And this was all off podcast. So yeah, man, he's just as cool off podcast as he is on, which is awesome.
Yeah, I can tell. He seems also like he's just got like all these different interests as well. That's what I really like about him. He looks like you
Yeah,
can just talk with him about anything.
yeah, 100%. Yeah, big time. Cool
Cool.
guy.
So tell us about yourself, where you come from, how you got into your life of travel and adventure. Like, is it something that you've always wanted to do, or?
Yeah, so I'm based here in North Wales, in the UK. Normal upbringing, normal background. Went to my local high school, went on to college, um, and yeah, the whole travel and adventure. Yeah, maybe from like stories I heard from other people and certain documentaries that I watched on TV, and I always just didn't want to sit back watching. I always wanted to be out there amongst it. And I'd say it was the college course that made me realize that I was, learning through experience. And I wanted to get out into the big world and experience as much as I possibly could, develop myself um, and just learn from other people, other cultures, traditions, how they live. And so, yeah, a lot easier said than done. I was, working as in a fish and chip shop back then. I was age 15, 16 when I came up with the idea to travel. But I just broke my goals down into lots of little sections. I was saving up the money. I was then working as a lifeguard. And come age 19, after finishing my college course, saving the right money, and gaining my scuba diving qualifications to enable me to find work abroad, I set out. I set out into the big wide world, and the rest is history.
The rest is history. So where did you start?
I started in China actually in 2010. So I was 19. And it's funny with China because I was there for about 2 weeks and I only just skirted along the coast, the east coast of China. And then once I left China for Southeast Asia, I sort of looked back at the map and realized just how massive China is. And I was like, I can't say I've traveled China. I've just touched the tip of the iceberg. I can't say I've traveled it. So I
I
always knew I would go back to China. I just didn't know when and I didn't know what to do.
Yeah, I guess with China as well, it's just, I mean, it's so big, it's practically a continent as well. And I bet you is that like that those like communities on the shore would be a million times different from the ones in the mountains or something like that. So
Yeah,
it's
oh, so
so
vast,
different.
so different. That diversity all the way through just caught me off guard so many times. Each province is like a different country. It's stunning. But when you think of China, you only really think of, the big time cities and maybe the air pollution, which is a shame, because there's just so much wilderness in
Yeah.
China.
So you walked right across the Yangtze River as well. Is that what made you want to come back, basically?
Yeah, well, I didn't really know about the whole Yangtze trip until after my Madagascar journey, which was my second world first record. And that was in 2016. But yeah, as soon as I saw the Yangtze, I just knew that I had to try
Yeah.
and do it. And yeah, just from its very true and scientific source over 5,100 meters altitude, all the way west of China in the Tibetan plateau. I knew it was dangerous and very wild in terms of, not only is it the altitude, but there were bears, there were wolves. I'd be facing snow blizzards at minus 20 degrees Celsius. Wasn't many locals in the far west. But eventually, I would cut further down south and make my way east to where the Yangtze pours into the East China Sea. And so it'd be like 6 months of survival and 6 months of really the urban side of China, the cities, their history, the culture, the delicacies, the different sort of um, dialects along the way and whatnot. So I just knew it would offer so much diversity. So as soon as the Yangtze was in my mind, I had to try to make it happen. It was so tough to make it happen, though.
I can imagine. How many years of plan? I mean, how long in planning did it take?
It took over 2 years. It was
Over
just
2 years.
so sensitive.
Yeah.
Over 2 years. And that is with the right teams. We had to get backing by the authorities. We had to get the government involved. They had to make me doctor for a year. They had to make me ambassador for a certain organization to get access to the national park, to get to the source. And oh man, and there was still delays by about 2.5 months, setting me deep into winter almost. So it was intense. And I was still being pulled in left, right, and centre by the police as well, taken to the government offices and being questioned.
I can imagine, because they must have just been like, what's this white guy doing walking?
Yeah. There were bears actively on the hunt as well. It was just before they went into hibernation or into their torpor. So it was the wrong season. And I didn't plan to go during that season. I planned to go 2.5 months before that season hit. But because of delays, it put me right in the thick of it. And so, the officers would see me. Yeah, and as you say, first and foremost, they see no sort of traveller, no foreigner in the far west there, trekking, because you do really need to go to town with the permits and the right officials and governments on board, But I carried about 16 different documents. So every time they would take me in and question me, I had a strong team and I had my satellite phone. So they were able to liaise with my team out in Beijing, and I had all of the documents. So they'd end up letting me go and allow me to continue, which they said's a rarity. They once came across 2 Russians and they didn't speak any Mandarin, they didn't have any team, and they didn't have any documents, and they were instantly deported within 24 hours.
Really?
And they said that was 10 years ago, and that's the last they saw a foreigner in this location, so it's crazy.
That is crazy. That's so wild as well. But you must have got that from like the villages as well, like the townspeople that you passed through as well. Like, who the hell is this guy?
Yeah, you know what, man? It came to a point. It's funny because it went from Mission Yangtze to Mission Escape and Evade. Literally. So we literally had to escape this sensitive area that we were in. It was at the border of Tibet. Very, very sensitive. We had to stay clear from that. But we also had to evade the locals because we realized, as amazing as the locals were, which they genuinely were, truly hospitable, they were anxious when they saw me, and they just didn't hesitate but to radio to the next nomad, like in like a year or a white felt tent, like a gur, who would radio until they had phone signal. Then they would call the police and they'd give the location, and the police would rock up. It'd take them like 6 hours to get to us. So they'd rock up at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And we realized, right, we need to evade the locals. We need to stay away from the locals because they're snitching on us,
So how did you do that? Did you just, travel at night, or like, how did you avoid them?
Yeah, we were just super vigilant. It's this one time that makes me laugh. We sort of didn't come across any locals, and it was time to camp up. It was that time when the sun was setting, and we sort of came up quite a big hill. And just at the far end of that hill, we saw maybe 3 or 4 different gurs. So we panicked and we crouched down, under the hill. And we said, we need to go back. And so we went back. When I say we, this was me, my 2 guides, and the horse that we had with us. And we went back on ourselves like 100 meters. And we had to camp there then for the night to make sure that we weren't seen by the locals. And then we set off at 3:30 or 4 o'clock the next morning when it was pitch black. And we literally had to tiptoe and try to avoid any rocks because, Castor Choy, the horse, would make the noise, and that would wake the Tibetan Mastiff up, which would wake up the locals, and And so, there was a lot of creeping going on and a lot of early risers just to get past the locals.
Yeah, I can imagine, because I imagine most locals are early risers there themselves.
Yeah, oh man.
I can't even imagine. But you're saying, so I mean, even where wolves and bears and stuff out there as well. Did you have any close encounters with wildlife?
Yeah, well, there's just one funny story where me and my videographer from Texas joined me. He's fluent in Mandarin, and we came across these locals who didn't speak Mandarin, but they were fluent in Tibet, which doesn't help things. And my friend didn't understand, but they were trying to warn us of something But we didn't really understand. We sort of waved and said, yeah, thank you, shishi knees, ITN, bye-bye. We carry on, but Kyle had filmed everything that they were saying. Anyway, for the next 2 days, we were followed by a pack of wolves, and they were quite hot on our tail. But keeping a distance, they weren't approaching us too much. It was almost like they were watching us to see if we're limping, for any weaknesses, and then they would potentially approach, which is risky for a wolf because they don't really go after people. There's smaller prey around. Anyway, they were fine. They left us alone after 2 days. It was pretty creepy hearing them howling, but it was quite awe-inspiring as well, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Anyway, that footage, 6 months later, it was in the hands of my editor in Beijing. And she called me up saying, you had no idea. She said, you remember that time where you were blah, blah, blah? I was like, yes, I remember those guys. She said, well, what they were trying to tell you is that valley that you're about to walk down, only yesterday, a lady was killed by a pack of wolves down that valley. And they were trying to warn us against going there. But we didn't know. We were like, yeah, bye-bye. We're off. And we were stalked potentially by the same pack of wolves that had only killed a lady just the day before. So that's pretty creepy. I'm quite glad we didn't know that until 6 months later.
Yeah, that's that. Because even when you were walking as well, that would put such an edge on it. Because I mean, being attacked by a pack of wolves. I mean, you can't even imagine how. Did you hear? I think it was on the Joe Rogan Experience as well. He was saying how his mate was backed up against a tree, and there was there was a group of attacking wolves coming at them, and he killed 2 of them with a bow and arrow, and his other
really?
with a pistol, and they had like 1 bullet left and 2 arrows left, and the wolves had them up against a tree.
Whoa.
And luckily, the wolves realized that 3 of them had been killed, so they turned and run away.
Wow, yeah. I tell you what, if you didn't have that bow and arrow or pistol, you would have been screwed. Because in China, it's illegal to carry any weapons.
Yeah, of course.
And so I was just there with a little knife, which wouldn't. I think I even have my knife confiscated. Yeah, I think I did.
You had the knife confiscated.
Yeah.
Just,
I think 2 or 3 times. During the travel, the logistical planning before I even made it to the source of the Yangtze. And so, yeah, but I was gifted a knife about 2 or 3 weeks into the journey.
Okay.
He pretty much just told me it's really wild. You shouldn't be here. You should hurry your pace up, get off the mountains. You're most likely going to come across bears. And I always had that sort of healthy mindset,
Yeah.
Where the bears will, they'll leave you alone if you leave them alone. They'll only attack if you scare them. So that's why I had my whistle, and I was blowing the whistle to make sure that they were aware that I'm coming, so they could run away. But the locals were just telling me otherwise, man. And they would send me photos and videos that were horrific. And they were telling me different. They were saying that the bears go down into communities. They come off the mountains because it's too cold for them. And they look for calories before they go into torpor, which is kind of like hibernation. And there's video footage of them going down into communities, into huts, ripping families apart. And I'm like, and I'm just one guy in his tent. And these bears are breaking into huts. So as soon as the locals started saying that, I always say, if the locals panic, you should definitely be panicking. Because they're so chilled and laid back out there. And so, he sort of gifted me a knife and was like, you'll need this. And I'm like, I can't do much with it against a bear, but thank you.
Yeah, that's insane though. I mean, because even for example, in the States and stuff where you do hear commonly bears and things like that, you never hear those kind of stories. The fact that they actively hunt people, that's terrifying.
Terrifying, yeah. Especially only in that season, really. The majority of the attacks come from where the Tibetans are out working on the field, in the mountains, and they'll, approach them, which will shock the bear. Say if they both come on top of the hill at the same time, the bear doesn't expect it, and the bear will just attack to protect them. And that's where, the most deaths do, or how most deaths do occur. But in the torpor season, they need to eat. You're on their menu.
Exactly. Yeah, anything's food for them out there. I guess if they can take you, then they will take you.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, so you say you started right from the source of the Yangtze, right? So how did you get to there? Where is it? Is it deep in the mountains?
Oh man, deep into the mountains. I think after a year of planning, I was always planning the traditional source, the Yangtze River. But then I only discovered that the same guy who mapped the traditional partnered up with NASA using the right satellite technology and was able to correct his wrong and find the true and scientific source. So there are now two sources. A lot of the Chinese don't really know the true and scientific source because they're taught in geography or in school the traditional source, because that's been the one that's been there the longest. But yeah, it was only in 2009 that the actual true source of the Yangtze was discovered, which is 2009. Crazy. 2009.
Well, imagine, that's insane.
Which is bonkers. So I had to change some of my mapping, and it's the longer source as well. So of course, if I'm going to do it, I have to do the proper one, and so I had to readjust the logistics. It would take me closer to Tibet, which was unfortunate because that is super sensitive. But yeah, it took us the first time we attempted to get to the source, it was just me, 2 film crew members, my Tibetan guide, and we had a horse because the film crew needed a horse to carry their kit. And day one of looking for the source, the film crew left because the locals scared them, saying that we found bears right where you're camping only this morning. So they were freaked. They freaked out. They didn't
left. Sorry, did you say they left? They just
they left. Yeah, they were like, nah, sack this. They were suffering slightly with altitude sickness, but not to the point that they needed to leave just yet.
Yeah.
It was those bears that it came as a shock because I did tell them all of the dangers. And day number 1, that's it. They are out of here. And then me and my guide pushed on, and of course the film crew had left us with their horse, and we couldn't just ditch the horse. We needed a hoe. And so that it was all right. It worked in our favor. The horse was carrying a lot lighter kit now than it would have been. It was just my rucksack, my guide's rucksack, super light for it. And yeah, we cracked on. But the day before we then reached the source, my guide, and put it this way, my guide is Tibetan. He was born at 3,000 meters altitude, so he's solid. When it comes to altitude sickness. And so he was pretty much there in case me or the 2 guides get altitude sickness. He can bring us off safely. But he got altitude sickness and I needed to take him off safely. I was like, oh, this is a nightmare. This is backwards. And then that, the first attempt was a failed attempt to the source effectively. We couldn't split. I had to take him off the mountains. He was bleeding from the nose. He was vomiting. He was in a pretty bad way. I took him off the mountains. That delayed me another 2 weeks. I had to regroup with a different team, and then finally we made it to the source of the Yangtze after the first failed attempt. It took us a few days to get there.
Yeah, wow. And then did you get another film crew then who stayed with you?
No. No, the film crew. We tried one guy, but he bailed. I think there was 1, 2, 3. I think there was 4 members of film crew, 2 that just said, absolutely not, you're on your own, and then 2 that left me. So effectively, I went through 4 or 5 different people before I'd even started the expedition, before I'd even made it to the source, which is crazy, Yeah. So I had to self-film for the first 2 or 3 weeks because they would be like the wildest 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah. And these new guides that I had, Tuda and Beamer, they were solid, they were nails. So we worked so well together. Even like there was wild yak out there, and I always thought yak, what are yak gonna do? They're like wild cattle. Yeah. But I was massively wrong. They educated me and said, no, these are brutal. Even the bears run away from the wild yak, especially in mating season, which it was. So you'd find sometimes at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, we're outside of our tent, setting off these Chinese firecrackers because these wild yak are getting too close to Castor Choi, the horse. And so we'd have to try to scare the wild yak off because they can be super aggressive and they're big, meaty.
Massive stuff, yeah.
Oh, man, yeah. And they're super aggressive in the mating season.
That's man. That's so we. I'm just trying to process all that. So I mean, it's even like what you'd imagine. The nice-looking yak, they're even after you as well. The locals aren't big fans as well. So you're up against it then. And how long were you on the road for? Solidly over 300 days, right?
Yeah, 352 days altogether. Yeah, but that wasn't 352 days of solid walking all day, every day. There were times, because we were filming for an international documentary, which will be released in the next few months, We had to take time out at communities and cities because I didn't want this journey to be, about myself and the adventure. I'm not into that. I want it to be about the diversity of China, about the people, not my opinion and what I think of this province, but their opinion. Let's get their thoughts. Let's, make it super interactive, super engaging. Let's show off the culture. Let's show off the delicacies. And so this was great. It meant that I was able to really immerse myself and, I was accepted. I was taken in by the locals for sometimes a week or 2 weeks at a time and really shown their traditions. And we were able to capture this. And so I can't wait for that to air so we can show, people all over the world, which will
no, I've been looking forward to it as well because it's such an interesting it's such an interesting walk as well. I know a lot of people do various different walks, but it's interesting that you just did it through one country as well. Such a diverse country, but it's just one country.
Right.
And a country which is probably going to be leading the world in the world's biggest superpower, if it isn't already. You must have seen that one thing. Like I recently, I was in university and I had, for the first time, I actually had loads of Chinese students with me.
Right.
And it's actually kind of crazy the way that they just don't need us. It doesn't even make sense why they're in England for us. They just
it's amazing, isn't it?
They've got technology is that they were just doing it. They would just get up their phone and then all of the notes would just be transferred into Mandarin and things like that for them. Especially you must have seen 10 times as crazy as that.
Oh, so much, man, so much. They don't have cards, they don't have cash. Everything's just on their phone. They pay. Everything can be done. Even just grabbing a taxi from the street. You just boop, scan that once you're done to pay. They have their own social media. They don't have Google. They have Baidu. They don't have Instagram. They have Weibo. So I had to get myself on, I think it was 8 different Chinese social media platforms that my team got me on, and they would help translate. So it was actually much greater following out in China. Just sort of the numbers took over all of my Western social media super fast. But the numbers are ridiculous. We're meeting up sort of with Chinese celebrities and social influencers along the way. And one guy called Seven, he went live with me for, I think it was 5 or 6 hours solid. He never takes the phone off. He's just live. He's got the power bank, powering his iPhone up, charging it. And he was live to over 1.3 million people for 5-6 hours straight. And hasn't dropped yet. 3 hours later, it's no, still slightly. It's 1.3.7, and I'm just that's insane. And he was if it drops below 1 million, I'll probably just cancel because 1 million's not enough.
What? 1 million?
That's ridiculous.
Well, I guess in the wide population of things, if that's a Chinese social media, say roughly just under 1 billion people are on it, I guess he's right, isn't he? I guess he's right. That isn't that many people.
Yeah, right. When you look at it like that, they're massive numbers, and some of the influencers out there on there. They would laugh at, I don't know, some massive celebrities around here, they'd be like, 44 million's quite a small following.
Yeah.
What? Just a different board game, isn't
it? I guess it must. I think China is just in general a different board game, and I'd so love to visit. But would you say it's changed a lot since you went when you first went in 2010?
Yeah, massively.
Really?
I remember going to Beijing and I, got a sense of what people meant in terms of the air quality. It was really bad. But this time round, they really cleared it up, man. The air quality is better. They sent out the army to cover, I think it was 19.5 thousand square miles just to plant trees. They have more wind farms. They have solar panels. There's now a 10-year fishing ban directly using the Yangtze River, so no one's allowed to fish from the Yangtze River now. There's a huge plastic bag ban now too, and everyone's awareness about the environment just seems super strong. Only probably the past 2 or 3 years, because the governments have really been getting behind it and enforcing the message, and obviously they do as the government say. It's just amazing. I was able to see that transition. Of course, I work with WWF and the England Fishery Department, all of these organizations helping to, protect and preserve all the unique biodiversity. And some of the messages there, I think the porpoise dolphin, which is the rarest dolphin in China, has been rapidly on the decrease for so many years. But only recently, the water quality of the Yangtze is getting so much better that the numbers of the Finland's porpoise dolphin has started to steady, and they believe in the next year or two, finally they might then be on the increase again, which is amazing news. Stuff like that is like, wow, but we don't hear it in the West. We don't hear it amazing, you know?
No, not at all. I mean, the only thing the thing I heard in the West, even from like, that they banned fireworks because they were saying it's bad for the environment or something.
That's right.
It's kind of weird things which makes the government look bad and stuff. I mean, I don't support China. I'm not massive on the Chinese government anyway, but I get they are really pulling their weight when it comes to the environmental side.
When it comes to and always, there are some dark things, going on in China as well, unfortunately. But I'm just one of those. I like to focus more. The same with the Madagascar. I believe positivity spreads positivity.
Yeah.
And if you're always talking about the negatives, it just gives a negative vibe. I believe we can shine awareness on the negatives by bringing a positive light. So the fires in Madagascar, for example, on my second world record, people would just shout about the forests burning down, the locals burnt the forests down and whatnot. It's like, well, no, why don't you shine the light on the Lima Network Conservation, which is a big organization that volunteer their time and risk their life to put out the fire, to expand the national park, to bring in these incredibly unique species of lemur. But then I think, so by shining the positive on the real unsung heroes, you're still getting the right awareness across that, yes, the forests do need protecting because they are on fire. But I just think, it's just a world full of negative news, isn't there? Especially with TV.
Yeah, it really is in social media as well. It's always spread around, and like I always say that, like, you should always travel for the people rather than the government as well. I'd love to go to Saudi Arabia. I'm a big fan of the Saudi Arabian government, but there's some amazing looking stuff over there.
Yeah, right.
Amazing people as well. I mean, Saudi Arabian people are some of the friendliest I've ever met.
So cool. Yeah, man. Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it? They do get a bad name because of the mainstream media.
Yeah, exactly.
And you think that's what the people are like, and it's just wrong it's just completely wrong. Yeah.
Exactly. So also tell us more about Madagascar then. So that was your second world record. What was the record? To walk from one side to the other unsupported, or?
So it was the length, so from south to north. So it was around 1,600 miles. So it was only 100 miles longer than my Mongolia trip, but my Mongolia trip took 78 days, whereas Madagascar took 155 days. There was just, I don't think there was a day out of the 155 days where I thought to myself, well, that was a nice day's hike, a pleasant day's trip. Every day was just absolutely brutal. I was held up at gunpoint by the military. I had to avoid bandits. I remember one time I went into the jungle to hide from the bandits, but I realized that the bandits are in the jungle hiding from the military. So I came out the jungle, was met by the military. I was like, oh shit. There was crocodile-infested rivers that we had to cross. We'd have to make rafts using natural resources like bamboo and bamboo leaves, strap it together and get across safely for whatever's lurking beneath. I almost died of malaria. I contracted the deadliest strain. That was in the first month. And so already out of the 5-month expedition, in the first month, I'd lost 13 or 14 kilograms.
Really?
I managed to make it to the city, or to the doctors, like only a few hours, she believes, before I slipped into a coma. So that was something serious as well, There was hacking through the jungle, so it's just Betty in hand, sort of hunting and gathering, using the jungle to survive. I had spiders falling off the trees and biting me. I had leeches that I'd have to ply off my skin every evening before a night's sleep in my tent. It was the cyclone season. We almost lost my photographer on a nighttime river crossing during the cyclone season that was crocodile infested, and she missed her footing and she was just grasped in between mine and my guide's hands. She was sort of kicking up from the bottom of the riverbank, bringing her head above the surface to get a gasp of air before she went back under because the weight of the rucksack was pulling her under. And I was thinking, if we let her go, not only will the rucksack drag her under, she'll then bash her head along the rocks. It's night time. The river's so loud because it's fully flooded that we have to shout even though we're a metre away from each other. If she survives all of that and gets washed further down, then it's crocodile territory. It's the Maldives River. It's the worst for it. Which was scary because this wasn't a solo and unsupported. It was kind of like there's someone else's life who's it's in my responsibility. So that was scarier than the stint in the Gobi Desert of Mongolia where I almost died and malaria. It was someone else's life.
I can imagine.
So
I
it
guess
was
it's
just intense.
yeah, I guess it's like, when it's something like that, you can focus on it. It's easier to just focus on yourself. It sounds selfish, but it's easy to just focus on yourself when there's no one else around. It does like, kind of weigh you down a bit because of course you're worried, but you don't want these people to get hurt since you've
Exactly. Yeah, exactly that, man. Yeah, yeah. And then, of course, we had the Gertrude. We had the little chicken.
What, a little chicken with you?
Yeah, so in order to summit the highest mountain in Madagascar called Maramakoto, it's tradition, the locals say, you have to carry a white cockerel in order to keep away the bad spirits and the witches, because they really, truly do believe in bad spirits and witches. So I'm all about respecting the culture no matter where I am. And so, yeah, I took myself a little white chicken. I named it Gertrude, a female German name, even though it was a male chicken, a cockerel. And yeah, Gertrude was with me for over 2.5 weeks. He summited 3 of the highest mountains. He became fully domesticated like a pet. We'd feed him, we'd water him. He slept on my tent, shat all over my tent. I had to clean it this morning, wasn't the best. And yeah, he was just perched in my backpack when he got too tired to walk, making all sorts of chirping noises, which got pretty annoying after 14 hours.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Directly in my ear, But then we set him free on top of the highest mountain. And that's always quite a funny story. Gertrude's made it quite. People seem to like the little Gertrude. He's in a David Attenborough book as well, called Beastly Journeys or something. Yeah, man. Yeah.
It's lived an interesting life for that chicken.
Yeah.
So where did the idea for Madagascar come up then? Because that's quite like, it's an interesting place. Very, very. I'm right thinking it's quite poor as well, right?
Yeah, I believe it's the poorest country in the world that's not been to war, which is
Really?
crazy. Yeah, yeah. So they've not been stripped of anything. They've not been, no one's gone out there to try to take anything from them, but yet they still remain. And I think it's just because it's a forgotten island.
Yeah.
Off the east coast of Africa. It's a massive island. It's the 4th largest island in the world. In terms of landmass, it's over 2.5 times the size of the UK.
Yeah, it's big. You look on a map, it's big. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it's just easy to forget about, which is a shame as well, because 80% of all plant life and wildlife in Madagascar is found nowhere else in the world. So pretty much every day I was probably walking past stuff that I would never see outside of Madagascar, which was incredible.
And that wildlife there is so like oddly developed as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's so like uniquely developed to its surroundings. It's such an interesting, fascinating place, and that is what surprised me, that not many people go there as well, because you would think it would be such a big tourist destination for people to see all these interesting wildlife.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's got odd biodiversity. I say recently, I don't know how long ago, but they found similar stuff in Madagascar to India. And of course, when you go back in time, it's because India and Africa were connected to Madagascar once, and it splits off. And apparently, Madagascar has never moved; it's always been there. But it's India and Africa that split from Madagascar. So that's like the rock that is in so deep that it just didn't budge.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, just a fascinating place. And that's pretty much what attracted me to Madagascar. That, as well as in Mongolia, the locals were amazing, but I would go well over 8 days sometimes without seeing a single human. And that's what I do it for, I do it for the human interaction. I like people. I like meeting new people, learning new things. And so when I came across the Mongolian nomads, they would take me in. They were super friendly, but I just felt I wasn't coming across a lot of locals like I would have loved to, because I don't have no military background, or like certain survival that I've learned has always been from the locals, crossing Thailand illegally into Myanmar, machete in hand, coming across a Burmese hill tribe that were then teaching me how to survive in the jungle, just really humbling and incredible experiences. So after Mongolia, I pretty much knew that Madagascar would be one of those places where I would constantly come across locals, and I would now be doing it with a guide, because it wasn't a solo or unsupported journey. So he was able to help me translate. So I was able to communicate with the locals and find out more about their way of living in their life, So Yeah, and then just the challenge, just the challenge of it. I'd be facing tropical dry forest, tropical rainforest, savanna, desert, high peak mountains, mountainous jungles, where you're sort of climbing up the mountain, but whilst you're hacking through the jungle at the same time. It's super intense.
Yeah.
Sometimes we'd cover like a mile or 2 miles after walking for 12 hours because the jungle was so thick.
Yeah, it just really must slow you down. I can't even imagine. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, and then your walk in Mongolia, that was the unsupported one, right? Because I think you sent me a picture of you, like you've got your hiking poles and you've got like a trailer behind you as well. That's really intense. That like,
Yeah,
was there like a solid route for that? Was there just a road, or was it just literally like east to west?
it was pretty much following like little tracks. Sometimes they were goat tracks or camel tracks. Sometimes they were the tracks that the locals used to drive their motorbike or ride their horse from one go to the other. Sometimes you would be on the wrong track and you'd have to readjust because, the tracks would be like your lifeline. They would lead you to the next water source. And so it was vital that and I did get lost and I did suffer with water and a well was dry, but pretty much this was my first world record. So this was the one that I feared the most because I just didn't know how I would handle certain scenarios. I didn't know it was a world first and
Oh,
foremost.
really?
Yeah, I wasn't really in it for the record. I just wanted the adventure. For the first few years, I'd taken on adventures all across Southeast Asia, mainly cycles. Get 10-pound bicycles, cycle the length of Cambodia and Vietnam. That jungle survival with the hill tribe. Some adventures in Australia, trekking the Himalayas, touring around India. All of these sort of low budget adventures, if you like, doing things. Even the cycle across Vietnam, I had no pump, no puncture repair kit, no helmet, no map, no a tent that wasn't waterproof. Really reckless stuff, really. But the catalyst, I really loved this. And then for the next 2 years after these adventures, I was living in Thailand as a master scuba diving instructor, a Muay Thai fighter to help top up my funds and pay my rent whilst living there. And only if you win, if you lose, you go home with nothing.
Oh, really?
And that was amazing, a cool lifestyle. But I was settled then for like 2 years. I was just like, man, I need to do something like my previous adventures. And that's when Mongolia came to mind. And when I brought the team involved, because I knew that this would require proper preparation and planning, we realized that there's only been one recorded person to attempt the solo and unsupported trek, but he unfortunately was evacuated on 3 different occasions. I think it was just before the halfway point. And I looked into this guy and realized he was a Navy soldier, a desert explorer. I sent him an email. I asked him if he's got any tips or anything that I should watch out for, like the dangers. And he got back with this majorly intimidating list saying you need to watch out for the grey wolves, the drunken nomadic drifters, the sandstorms, the snow blizzards, the steep ravines, the dry wells. And the list went on. And I freaked. It's just like, this guy is nails. I'm a 22-year-old scuba diver, and he's this badass desert explorer and Navy soldier. And so I did put my mind off Mongolia. I did, I feared it, and I looked at somewhere more populated and more safer. But at the same time, I realized, just because no one's found a way to do something, it doesn't mean it can't be done. And I love that saying. I came across that saying whilst I was in the prep, and I was like, right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to prepare as much as I can. I'm going to get the right logistics, get the right teams involved to help me plan this. It was very low budget. I had a few grand to do this, which is probably one of the cheapest world first records in history.
It cost like, I mean, I would love to go to Mongolia, but it costs like 700 pounds, nearly £1,000 for the flight there, pretty much from anywhere as well, unless you get the train from Russia.
Yeah, man, it's insane. It's insane. Even the trailer that you mentioned, that trailer, if I had the money, I could have gone all out and purchased a proper carbon fiber, big robust trailer. It would have cost me a few grand. I just didn't have that. So I ended up going to a family friend. He fixed up that trailer in his back garden using mild steel. So that means it was robust for sure. It was a strong trailer, but it means with nothing in it, it would already be 40 kilograms, which is ridiculous, you know.
Yeah.
On a full load, it would be 120 kilograms, which is about 18 stone. You know, that's the same weight as a heavyweight boxer, for example.
That's
I was just
big.
like, oh man.
Yeah.
And I didn't have no gym membership. I couldn't afford no gym membership, so I was just training in my back garden. My uncle dropped me off a tractor tire and a sledgehammer, and I was just grinding in the snow, in the rain, just building myself mentally.
Rocky style.
Oh, it was proper, yeah. And I had all of these fears, and I was scared. I didn't know how I would handle wolves, sandstorms, snow blizzards. I didn't know how I would face being lonely, because all of my previous adventures were with my best mate Matt. So I just didn't, you know, I was uncertain. I was unsure. I didn't know myself. So I had a lot of fear with that one, for sure.
Yeah, no, it's and fair play is warranted. But what I mean, I guess the question for me is, why do you think that sort of this other guy failed and that you didn't? Like, do you think maybe is that he was so experienced that maybe his experience kind of put a bit of a block on him as well?
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Potentially he, you know, and maybe he had different commitments. Potentially it was the fact that if he pushed on, there's a high chance that he might die.
Yeah.
He might, you know, he has a family. He might think that's not worth taking. It could be the whole I think, from what I gather, it looked like he really suffered with the mental aspect, even more so than the physical. There's certain pieces to camera that I saw. I think they've been taken off YouTube now, but there were certain pieces to camera where just looked like he was mentally breaking and really missing home. And you know, he was a good guy as well. He was a nice guy. I completed that. I got back, and he sent me a message saying, you proved that journey was possible. I like to think I was the angel sitting on your shoulder, you know, which was really nice. But yeah, it's a tough journey. And I think with me, you know, I just almost like I had nothing to lose, but at the same time, I had everything to lose. So I say nothing to lose. So I was going to just push myself. Maybe I was a little bit reckless as well. And I just didn't care, get the job done. But I also had everything to lose in a way that I knew that if I didn't complete that expedition, there would be no adventuring career. You know, it would be come back home and get myself back out to Thailand and, you know, continue being a scuba diving instructor and, you know, follow a different path. So this expedition across Mongolia for me was a make or break. And I just think that helped so much. But then my training was ridiculous. The preparation, and I built up the fear so much mentally. I was genuinely, whilst I was training at 5 a.m. in the snow, flipping the tractor tire, beating it with a sledgehammer, really trying to build up my inner core strength and just the durability. I was telling myself mentally that if there's going to be wolves, expect to be attacked. If there's going to be snow blizzards or sandstorms, expect them to be the biggest and the baddest. I was just visualizing hell. I was putting myself so into such a fearful zone. But also, it really helped in a way that I didn't want to face the biggest storms, of course. But if I was out there and worst case scenario was to hit, my thinking was at least it wouldn't come as a shock or surprise. It would have come as something I anticipated, something I expected. So, you know, get over it, crack on and deal with it enough to hopefully tackle it and survive it. You know, that was my thinking. And I believe that helped a lot. I even left myself voice memos from when I was back home. You know, shelter, I was warm, I was super positive. But I knew that when I was out in Mongolia, I would be hungry, I would be thirsty, I would be super negative. You know, I wouldn't be the same Ash Dykes as I am back here when I'm out there. And so I almost left a note. I think I deleted it, or I've never revealed. Maybe I should put it up somewhere. I don't know. But I left myself a voice memo. Pretty harsh, you know. I gave myself pretty stern talking to, you know. But I told myself I would never listen to that. I would only listen to it if I was going through such a brutal time that I needed to remind myself why I'm doing this. And it was pretty much words from positive Ash. Of like why you need to keep going and what you're going to face. You know, if you fail, this is going to happen. And it's very brutal to myself. If you succeed, you've got the potential of this happening. And so it was and I did listen to that. There was one time where I was pretty much slowly dying because of the heat stroke. I'd missed a water point, or that well was dry, and I now had another 4 days to get to the next water source, which I was rationing my last remaining dribbles of water. It was 40 degrees Celsius. The tires were sinking into the soft sand. My organs were drying up. I was delirious. I was hallucinating, and I was spending far too much time underneath my trailer, hiding from the sun, an hour at a time. It was at that point, after weeks on end of feeling like this, but I knew I was just on my way. And that if I didn't keep getting up from out of my trailer and pushing on, I'm just going to die out here in the Gobi Desert. I had no evacuation plan like the previous guy. There was no helicopter to take me. I'd need to rely at least 3-4 days for my agent to get to me, and then another 2 days to get me out. And I just didn't believe I could survive for 6 days. But what I did, I've always believed, again, in visualization, breaking the goals down. I broke it down into 100-meter sections because I could see 100 meters. And I would rest for no more than 5 meters under the trailer and walk for 100 meters.
Yeah.
And I continued doing that. And that's when I listened to that voice memo as well. And just about made it to that community in an awful way. You know, my green was black pretty much. I was hurt.
Actually, yeah, that's actually happened to me, to be fair, actually, just from just being hot, not having enough water. Yeah, it's a horrible feeling. Like you've
suffered with heat stroke?
Yeah, I've suffered with heat stroke.
Oh, man, where was that? Tell me that.
This was just in Israel. I was just in Jerusalem. I was just I think because I was helping out at a hostel, and I was just cleaning on the roof and things like that, and I was cleaning around, and obviously, like, literally you can't even think. It's so strange. Your brain feels like it's being fried. Like, it's so horrible.
Yeah. Because there's different. I always thought, because I faced like heat exhaustion when or sunstroke, I think it was. And isn't it sunstroke is the milder? That's the one that gives you the headaches. But heat stroke, apparently, it's very difficult to survive that. If you've got heat stroke, you've got a few hours before you're dead or something, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. So it's like sunstroke, heat exhaustion, and then heat stroke. But I always thought it was heat stroke, heat exhaustion, and then sunstroke. But I got those two muddled up and stuff. But man, it's you can die fast from that. I think it was the Nile trek that Lev did, where one of his guys died within a few. Wasn't it under 12 hours?
Literally hours. Like 2-3 hours. They literally lay him down. They made up a shelter. A couple of people went off to get water, and he just died straight up.
And that's heat stroke, isn't it? Yeah, that can take you. Can take you, man. Yeah, brutal.
It's really, really scary. Like, and people don't think about that. They just think sunburn or something like that. And I imagine, I guess, like, I was thinking when I heard you talking about this on another podcast was that, I mean, maybe I would consider traveling by night as well. But I'm guessing by night there's just nothing. You just can't see anything. No natural except the moon. There's nothing to see.
Yeah, that was it. It was kind of like the tracks that I was following were really vital, and you need to be able to see in the distance, because sometimes you're following one track, but then they'll split into 5 different tracks. And if it's at nighttime, you're not going to be able to see far enough to where that track leads. But if it's daytime, you can get a look at the horizon and see if that track's going in the right compass heading. So there was that, but there was also the ammo pit vipers that are pretty active. If you stand on the back end of an ammo pit viper and that bites you, 4-day evacuation isn't fast enough.
Shit. I didn't even think about snakes and stuff out there as well. So what sort of wildlife is there in Mongolia? Is it the wolves, bears, snakes?
I think you've got like the rare Gobi bear, but you're lucky to see that. It's super rare, so they weren't really a worry. The wolves were the big wolves. They're the grey wolves in Mongolia. So you've got them. You've got the snakes. In terms of wildlife, I think you've got the gazelle. You've got the yak. You've got wild camels. You've got the eagles hunting in the Mongolian steppe, which was beautiful. You've got the reindeer hill tribe up north, living in their teepees. I never made it there, but I want to go back for sure. The eagle hunters.
That's one thing I would love to see.
Man. Mongolia is a beautiful place. I think a lot of people see Mongolia as barren, which it is down south, especially the section I was going through, the Gobi Desert. But it's really lush up north. You've got the trees, you've got the mountains, you've got the Altai mountains. It's just quite varied, and it's a massive country as well, isn't it? There's 4 million people that live in Mongolia. but 3 million of those are in the capital city in
Yeah.
So it means that the wilderness is very empty, and that's why I'm covering 8 days without seeing a single human sometimes.
Yeah, I'd love to go. It's really, really far high up on my list. And
Yeah, I massively recommend it. You will love it, man. If you want to know what the world looked like before we arrived, Mongolia is that will give you a little taste of that.
Yeah, the whole of Central Asia is just, I mean, it's just so cool. I've been to like Kazakhstan, I've been to Kyrgyzstan and stuff like that.
Man, what are they like?
It's really interesting. Kazakhstan's a little bit like nervous because it's like there's just police everywhere and staring at you in the cities. Yeah, it's like a proper police state. Like I'm pretty sure I got like robbed trying to get into a museum by the police. They took like 10 quid off me just to let me get into a museum. Like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I got robbed by them. But as soon as so I was in the city of Almaty in Kazakhstan. As soon as you step out, like 10 minutes, it's insanely beautiful. You got so it's the Altai Mountains. I think it's something like to the east is China, to the north is just pure wilderness, to the south is Kyrgyzstan, like to the east is like Afghanistan, Tajik. It's amazing.
And what are the people like? Super friendly, I bet.
Yeah, the people there are really, really nice. Especially in Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan as well. They were actually quite nice as well. But I got kept in like the border for like 2 hours in Kazakhstan as well because I think they saw my skin color, me being an Indian guy, but they have an English passport, so like kind of didn't.
Did it?
Yeah. They kept saying, when was the last time we went to Afghanistan? Never been. When was the last time you back to Pakistan? I've never been. Like it was just intense.
Wow.
And after like 2 or 3 hours, the guy was like, right, just a big like boss looking guy came in, and he was like, right, where are you from? Let's not play any games anymore. Like, where are you from? English. Yeah, listen to us. Like, we're English. And then eventually they just let us through. They're like, fine, go.
Wow. Intense, right? Super sensitive. Jeez. Yeah. What? So, like the towns and the cities, there's just loads of police. What about if you go to the wilderness? Do you need permits to get to the wilderness, or can you just go?
No, I know. Yeah, I think you can go. I think I think it's pretty good because a lot of backpackers and travelers do go through there. But I think most of it is just most of it is real wilderness in Kazakhstan. Yeah. It's like the 8th biggest country in the world or something like that, and it's not very populated.
It's the largest landlocked country, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's got the sea, but yeah, it is, and it's massive. Like the train in between the Almaty and Astana, I think, takes people like 12 hours. So it's really
massive place.
Yeah.
But you're right, man. Asia in general is just I've not got myself to South America or really mainland Africa. I keep going back to Asia. It's just so diverse, isn't it? I just love it. It's like I've lived a decade in Asia, so it's just like my second.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. But I mean, like I'm an Indian background, so I've been to India quite a few times. I've been to Cambodia, Thailand, but then last year I spent 3 months in the Middle East, which is still Asia as well. But that's just another world in general. But like the same. Yeah, I've been to Egypt, I've been to Morocco, so that was mainland.
Morocco.
In Congo and Rwanda earlier this year, but that fell through because of COVID.
Oh man, Congo would have been insane.
Yeah, I'm so annoyed. I was meant to be seeing the gorillas. I was meant to be staying up for the night with like Africa's most active volcano next to the lava pit. It was going to be insane. I was going to do some like a short film out there, but it all fell through.
Amazing, man. Yeah, Congo is just like, I know, man. It's just like the heart of darkness, isn't it? Like in terms of danger, but the wilderness there is like a hidden gem, isn't it?
Wildlife as well.
Wildlife. Yeah. I always looked at the I don't know, man, like the Congo River. Definitely the most dangerous river in the world, topping all mighty rivers of the world, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, more dangerous than the Yangtze, the Nile, the Amazon, probably combined. That Congo has got, you got hippos, you've got, it's the diseases from the mosquitoes. It's
you get elephants in those jungles as well. You just come across a herd of jungle elephants and they'll ram through you. But it's the disease as well, right? You have no idea what the hell's out there. I think recently there's some in Rwanda. I think there was some malaria parasites which are now immune to malaria like tablets and medication. They found
Whoa.
another parasite there. That's the beginning of a horror film.
That's what Joe was saying. He was saying that Joe Rogan. He was saying that his friend was in the Congo and he came out of the jungle with a new disease that they didn't know how to cure or something. Yeah.
I don't know what happened
or
to
maybe
him.
that was like a malaria that had become used to, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but
Congo would be a great place to get to for sure, man.
Yeah.
Hopefully you get that rebooked and you.
Yeah, I really hope. Yeah, I really hope.
Let me know how you get on.
Yeah, it's gonna have to be another year or so, I think, to be honest. Another year and a half. But what are your next expeditions and plans? I will leave you now because I know that you're a busy man and so you've got things to do. But
no worries. I appreciate you calling. We've spent ages trying to get this.
Yeah, long time.
It's about time we get it sorted. But yeah, so next is we're working on mainly the documentary takes priority at the minute. You know, we want to get that launched. We secured a big international channel. It's looking to be the end of October that airs, but I can't announce it until obviously the exclusivity goes to them. So they'll be announcing it first. And so once that's done, you know, I've got a strong team now in Los Angeles and we're working on some very big things. Can't say too much yet, but we're working with some channels. And yeah, man, this is just the beginning, really. It's just the start. Mission Yangtze was the warm-up. We're on to big things. We've got some big things coming. Really maybe not in terms of duration, like 352 days, because that was ridiculously long. But, you know, we want to look more on the interactivity. If I can continue doing this, but share positive messages in terms of more environmental angle and the interactivity. I loved Mission Yangtze. We had so many people joining, you know, hundreds. We were throwing lots of events during the process as well. If we can do something similar, but we want bigger TV again next time, so make it more into a series type of thing, maybe different, short, extreme, and just as ambitious expeditions, but different continents and environments.
Yeah, that sounds awesome, man. That sounds fun.
So yeah, man, exciting. How about yourself? What's happening for the remaining 4 months of 2020?
I'm not sure yet. I'm just trying to get my paperwork sorted for a job teaching abroad. So I'm just kind of waiting on that at the moment. But I'm just finishing up my masters. So I just got I've got one more documentary to do. But I was studying.
What's the masters in?
My master's is in journalism and documentary filmmaking.
Nice.
So, but I mean, I had a like a whole thing planned to make my final piece with like an environmental activist group, but it all fell through because of COVID-19 as well. So and then now I've just got to basically, I mean, my university was rubbish with it, and they basically said, oh, you've just got to do like a documentary on your phone, like a video diary or something like that, which is really boring. So I'm not too sure yet now, but I'm sure I'll find out something to do.
Yeah, just major delays, isn't it? But I'm sure you'll get it sorted for sure.
Yeah. But well, I mean, thank you. I think that's everything, man. Thank you so much for coming on. I really
no problem at all. Thank you. It's been a great chat. We'll keep it in touch.
Thank you. Yeah, enjoyed it. Yeah, let's do it again sometime. Definitely.
Yeah,
so I mean,
cool, man.
For followers, check out his Mission Possible. Ash's book is on my list. I was going to audiobook it, but I don't rate audiobooks, so I'm just going to read it now. I don't
want Audible just yet, but in the future, hopefully.
Yeah. Okay, and where can we find your Instagram? Where can we find you?
Yeah, just Ash_Dykes for the Instagram. But it's all on the website, which is just ashdykes.com, the YouTube, the Facebook, Twitter, and whatnot. Yeah.
Lovely. All right, brilliant. Thank you, listeners. Thank you, Ash, man. Take care. You stay safe out there.
Cheers, man. Will do.
Cheers.